Good morning, everyone. Oh my goodness, it is so nice to hear that greeting. And it is especially nice to hear that greeting on such a beautiful day. We have the perfect day to be out here for our Memorial Day assembly. And I don't believe any of you have ever done this before, because we weren't able to get together in a big group like this for a while. So it's wonderful to have our school family back together to celebrate such a special and important day. And I have to say, you all look great. Okay, I love to see all of the red, white, and blue that I see in all of our participants here. So today is our celebration of Memorial Day, although Memorial Day is actually on Monday, and that's why we have the long weekend. But we think it's important here at HOD to gather around our flag, which is the symbol of our country, for this very special assembly. And again, we're so fortunate to have such a beautiful day to do it. So we're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we should all put our hands over our heart, look up at our flag, and let's say it together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, well, Mr. Escalay, they did that as an echo, I believe.
They did,
Yeah. So, but it was beautiful nonetheless, so thank you. So now we are going to turn it over to Mr. Escalay to do the Star Spangled Banner.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Balfour.
So, my friends, the Star Spangled Banner was written over 200 years ago, which is a pretty long time. It was written by a gentleman named Francis Scott Key. And it was during a war between the British and the United States. And Francis Scott Key was actually aboard. He was a citizen of the United States. He was a poet and a lawyer. But he was aboard a British ship. And the British ship was actually attacking a fort called Fort McHenry. And Francis Scott Key was very, very nervous because he didn't know what was going to happen. But during this battle, he was like, you know what? As long as I can see the flag flying over the fort, I know everything's okay. Because I know that means that we still have the fort and we're still in control of the fort, which is the important thing. And back then, the United States was much smaller. Much, much smaller. And nowadays, we have 50 stars on our flag. Back then, 50 stars for the 50 states. Back then, we had 15. So Francis Scott Key wrote about how he could see the 15 stars on the flag, and he said, I know as long as I can see those 15 stars, everything is okay. And then, the next morning, after everything had wrapped up, he said, wow, it's still there. So he knew that everything was okay. And seeing the flag gave him a lot of courage, and it gave him a lot of hope. Now, I am going to take an instrument that we've seen before. We saw it a little while ago, way back at the beginning of the year. You may be tempted to call it a tuba, but it is actually my euphonium. Euphonium means sweet sound in Latin. It's a very, very pretty instrument. I love playing this instrument. So I am going to play Star Spangled Banner for you now. If you know any of the words, feel free to sing along.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Escalay, and I was very happy that so many people knew the words to that song, because it's a hard song to learn. So let's get back to talking about Memorial Day. As Mr. Escalay referred to with the Star-Spangled Banner, Memorial Day has everything to do with our country. It's a patriotic day. It's an American holiday. And the fact that we are standing here around the flag told you that right off the bat this morning. Now, Memorial Day comes from, the word memorial comes from the word memory. And that's why this is called Memorial Day. Years ago, it used to be called Decoration Day because it was a day that people would decorate the graves of our soldiers and important people in our history. But now we talk about it as Memorial Day because we remember all of the special people that have served our country so well. And that includes people in the service and also people in our community, in our town, and in our state, and our whole country. We take time to especially remember the people who have been in our country's service. And that includes our soldiers in the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and the National Guard. These people have made sure that our country has stayed safe and strong. Many of you may have grandmothers or grandfathers or parents or aunts or uncles or other people in your family who have been in the military service. So this is a special time for us to think about all those people and to say thank you for all that they have done to serve our country. So I think this is a good time, Mr. Escalay, for our first and second graders and anyone else who knows the words to sing Your Grand Old Flag.
Thank you.
All right, first and second graders, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You're a grand old flag, yeah, I'm flying by. You're the emblem of the land I love, the largest and the brave. Everybody needs to support the red flag and live with it.
Well, thank you once again, Mr. Escalay. Thank you first and second graders in particular, and everyone else who sang along. You know, as we said, this is Memorial Day, a day to remember those special people who have served our country. So on this day, I think of my father, who served in the Army as a sergeant during World War II, a long, long time ago. I also had an uncle who was in the Marines and two other uncles who were in the Navy at that time, many years ago. And more recently, I had a nephew who was in the Marines. In addition to that, there are many, many, many other people in our school family. So I have a list here. It's going to take me a couple of minutes to get through, but it's important that we remember and thank each of these people. Of course, we all know Mr. Gleason, right? Mr. Gleason, who takes such good care of our school, also took good care of our country when he was in the Marines many years ago. In addition, like my dad was in the Army, then Mrs. Previtt's father was in the Army, and Mrs. Horton's father also served in the Army, just like my dad. And then Mrs. Horton's brother, Jeff O'Brien, served in the Marines, and her nephew, Kevin O'Brien, is an Army veteran as well. Mrs. Hurley's son-in-law, Captain Mark Robinson, is serving in the Navy right now. He serves as a deputy for Squadron 4. He's involved with submarines. Mrs. Murphy White's brother, Colonel John J. Murphy, is in the Marines, and her stepfather, David Daffron, retired from the Air Force. Mrs. Merritt's son-in-law, Warrant Officer William Maldonado, is serving in the Army right now, and he's a pilot at Fort Bliss down in Texas. Mrs. DeGeer has a nephew and his wife, and they are captains in the North Carolina National Guard, Captains Dean and Melissa Clifford. In Mrs. Ledger's class, Georgia Yanisik's dad served in the Army, and Benjamin Very's dad was a sergeant in the Air Force. Ben Holton, who was in Mrs. Previtt's class, his dad was in the Marines. Madeline McGorthy in Mrs. Pfeiffer's second grade class, her father just retired after serving for many years in the Navy. And then in Mrs. McCracken's class, Owen Kennedy's dad is in the Army Reserve and recently came back from serving our country. And Owen's uncle, Sergeant Adam Kennedy, served our country very well. In fact, the Freeman Kennedy School is named after him. So, wow, that is a lot of people just from our school family who are serving our country or who have served our country. We are so proud of them and thank them for their service. As we think of these people who have served or are serving in our country so well, we can also think of Miss Day, who was the a principal over at the Freeman Centennial School many years ago, and the very important person that our school is named after. And she would be so happy to see all of us gathered here. She was very proud to be an American, so I think this is the perfect time to sing that song.
All right, kindergarteners, now we're doing Proud to be an American, my friends. I start with a little guitar part, and then you're going to join in with me. One, two, ready? If tomorrow all the things were gone I worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. One, two, ready, go, and I'm proud to be an American. Well, at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I'll gladly stand up next to you, and there's ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the Great Lakes of Minnesota. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, to ready, go, that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that place to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And 1, 2, ready, go. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Escalon. So let me just repeat a little bit of that. So Miss H. Olive Day would be very, very proud that the children in the school named after her are singing that song, and they're proud to be Americans. But more than that, she'd be very proud that every day you do your best to be a good citizen of our school and of our country by being kind and caring friends and by trying your best every single day. Miss Day was a person who not only helped our schools a great deal by being a teacher and then a principal, but she also helped out the town. She was involved in many organizations in town. She was involved with the Grange, the Federated Church, and Stony Brook, and she did a lot to help the town of Norfolk grow and be better every day. She was always at the Memorial Day Parade, and in fact, maybe some of you are going to that Memorial Day Parade on Monday, which is a tradition here in Norfolk. So, in conclusion, I think we just want to take a moment, let's just have a moment of silence when we stop and think about all of the people that we've talked about, all of the people in our country's service, all of the people at our school and our town who do so much to help us be strong and safe and continue to learn and grow here at HOD. Let's just take a moment of silence. Okay, I know that wasn't nearly long enough to think of all those people, but you know, we have a whole long weekend and you can continue to think of them all weekend long. So now I'd like to thank Mr. Escalay, who has been teaching you these songs and who conducted the songs today. Thank you, Mr. Escalay. I want to thank Mr. Gleason for helping to set everything up here this morning so that we could have this nice gathering out here. And of course, for his service to our country. And I want to thank Mr. Barker from NCTV, who is here to record this, and so that all of your families and friends can enjoy it, and you can enjoy it too, watching it later on. So now I think that we are going to end our assembly, and we'll go on with our day to keep learning and growing and being those great citizens of our country. And Mr. Escalay is going to play your Grand Old Flag, and you may sing that as you walk into school. Thank you for participating and for being such a great audience. Have a nice long weekend. Okay.
All right. As we head on in, get ready to sing. One, two, one, two, three. Nicely done.